Today we're going to talk about we're reading from the third canto, the teachings of Kapila. And Kapila is very important because as an incarnation of Vishnu, he talks about something extremely important, and that is self-realization. Now, we've all heard this word, self-realization. We've all been to perhaps some of the centers that teach self-realization. We may have even thought that certain people are self-realized, but what's the standard? What's the gold standard of self-realization? How do we know that someone is self-realized, and how do we get there? These are some of the questions we're going to be addressing today. The Bhagavatam makes it very, very clear. Like, how do you recognize the qualities? I know the Bhagavad Gita talked about it as well, but the Bhagavatam will go into it even deeper. Kapila will talk about the material nature and how we go into the spell of illusion, the different elements that are involved in spinning this illusion for us, the illusion of the world, the illusion of reality, the matrix as some call it, and how do we get out of it? Because that's what self-realization is learning how to get out of the matrix, how to get out of the web of illusion that this world spreads around us. And it does it through our senses, through our mind, it does it through this body, and it does it through our ego, our sense of self, who we think we are, not who we actually are. So what is the process that is involved in waking up? And what is the process that is involved in becoming identified with the true self, the soul? That's the conversation we're going to be having today. And I look forward to you being with us through it all. It's going to be exciting. So let's dive into the Bhagavatam, third canto, chapter 26. And today we're going to just kind of give you a moment's recap, because I know we've done that a few times already, but just right here for those of you in case you're new, this is the conversation between Kapila and Devahuti, his mother. And Devahuti was blessed to have a son who was a highly evolved, enlightened being. In fact, it is said that he was the incarnation of Vishnu, Vishnu being the supreme being. In the Vedic literature, in Hinduism, if you want to use that term, I don't like to use that word, but all right. Kapila was, that exactly, the incarnation of Vishnu who had come to teach the Sankhya philosophy. And he started with his mother. So he began by teaching her first. It is the philosophy of liberation. It is the philosophy of awakening, of self-realization. And it needs to be taught by someone who is genuinely self-realized. I mean, the person who is best equipped to teach you something is the one who's got it, who's attained it. I'm not teaching it here from a place of me being in that position. I don't think I'm anywhere near it. But I am attempting to give you an insight into what Kapila is talking about, and the little bit of realization I may have had along the way that might be helpful to you. So Bhagavan Kapila explains that the ultimate perfection of self-realization is attained when the knots of attachment to the world are cut. Okay, this is really important to understand. When the knots of attachment to the world are cut. What does that mean? See, we're all caught up in the illusion of this is me, right? This body is me, this personality is me, my interests, my hobbies, my opinions, my upbringing, my story, the things that happened to me, my life experiences, maybe the abuse that I suffered, maybe the trauma that I had. All of that is me. And that's how we normally think. That's a fact. But the process of self-realization is coming to the awareness that I am none of the above. Neither my body, nor my personality, nor my story, nor any of these things define who I am. Neither does what I do, my job, my career, nor the things I have. So let's start peeling away all of this stuff. And as you peel it away, what remains? All the things you have gone. All your accomplishments gone. All the the recognition, the fame, the adoration, whatever it is you did, right? Gone. Your body, whatever your concerns are, whether you're fat or thin or young or old, or whether you're beautiful or ugly or whatever the heck you think you are, gone. Strip it all away. Take it all out. All gone, all gone, all gone. And what remains? That which remains is the beginning of your self-realization. Na iti, na iti, na iti. This is how they go in the Vedic literature. Not this, not this, not this, not this. I am not this, I am not this, I am not this. So anything material, that is not me. Okay, so take all that away. Anything mental, anything physical, not me. Right? Then who am I? That's the core question we begin with. So when we get rid of I and mine, that's what we just did. Then you begin to realize and begin to experience that everything is an expansion of the energy of the Absolute. Everything is an expansion of the energy of the Absolute, or Brahman. Meaning, the things that you see around you, nature, this body, other people, animals, they are all made up of energy. And that energy is a divine energy. This is where the scientists have no clue. They know it's energy, right? They can see that, but they don't know what it is and where it comes from and why it's here. And that's the gap, because they exclude a very important factor, that there is anything called Brahman. Brahman meaning spirit, anything that is of the divine or God. They exclude that factor. And if you exclude that factor, well, then you won't have a clue as to the origins, the true origins of this world and of the people and the creatures here. And since you don't recognize the origins and you don't recognize the nature of that which everything is made from, the clay from which it's like clay from which pots are made, or metal from which cars are made, right? If you exclude the very building blocks of reality, then you won't, whatever you come up with is going to be either shallow or false. You have to include the building blocks, and then you're going to have a complete picture. So a science that is actually able to incorporate within it the material aspects of science, the mental aspects of science, and the spiritual aspects of science is a complete science. Unfortunately, we don't have that amongst our academics and so on. And amongst the spiritual people, we often don't have the material sciences, but it would be wonderful to bring these together. Now, what is this spiritual science, and what is spirit? What is this unknown element that scientists do not consider? Kapila explains it very beautifully here. He says, as water in its natural state before coming in contact with earth is clear, sweet, and unruffled. Okay, listen to what he says. As water in its natural state before coming in contact with the earth is clear and sweet and unruffled. I don't know why unruffled, but so the characteristic traits of pure consciousness, that's what we're talking about, spirit or spiritual energy. The characteristic traits of pure consciousness are complete serenity, clarity, and freedom from distraction. Now think about it. We live in a world where we are full of distraction. Forget freedom from distraction. We have little to no clarity because we do not see things as they are. We see things as we want them to be, according to our desires. And we definitely don't have serenity. So we are in the opposite state of spirit. We are disconnected from it. We are in a place where we do not feel its presence. And because of that, we mistakenly think that this world is all there is. Now, this spiritual energy of Brahman, when it is mixed with the three gunas, goodness, passion, and ignorance, and I'll explain that to you a little more clearly in just a moment, they give rise to the 25 elements of material creation, and we will dive into that as well. So let's begin with this concept of the three gunas, and for that I've put together a little chart to help you understand. So there we have in the background the sources of creation. Brahma, who does the creating, Vishnu, who is the maintainer and actually is the source of everything, and Shiva. And then we have the energy of the universe called Brahman. Now, from Brahman, for a level of filter is added, or into Brahman, a filter level is added called the gunas, the three modes of material nature. And these are goodness, passion, and ignorance. These are states of consciousness. And then from there emerge 25 elements. So let's see if we can try to put some more sense into this. So Brahman is pure consciousness. Then from there, as it comes into this material creation, come the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, which could also be described as goodness is serene. When you're serene, then you're in the mode of goodness. When you're active, you're in the mode of passion. And when you're dull, and not motivated, and feeling kind of burnt out maybe, or feeling lethargic, that's the mode of ignorance. Altogether, these form the false ego. This is a strong filter that filters out reality. Or rather filters our perception of reality. Now, what is reality? The 25 elements that are talked about are the 5 gross elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, that most people know about. The 5 subtle elements, smell, touch, taste, sight, and sound. The 5 knowledge acquiring senses, such as sight, hearing, touch, smell, and taste. The 5 active organs, speaking, working, movement, reproduction, and evacuation. The 4 subtle senses, mind, intelligence, ego, and contaminated consciousness. And finally, time, which is the element that mixes it all together. So, why are we talking about all this? Because this is what has us in its grip. See, first there are the elements, right? Earth, water, fire, air, ether. Then there are what we'll call the subtle elements. So then these elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, they have 5 subtle elements, which is smell, taste, touch, sight, and sound. Now, they could have that, but unless we had the instruments with which to perceive that, we would not know. So these are the 5 knowledge acquiring senses. Our sight, or the visual aspect of us, our hearing, or the auditory, or touch, or the kinesthetic, our smell, or the olfactory, and taste, or the gustatory, I think it's called. Then there's the 5 active organs. So now we see the world, we perceive the world with all its tastes and colors and smells and all of that. And then what do? Well, we speak about it. We work, we manipulate matter, we move, we reproduce, and we evacuate, clear out all that we've taken in. Interestingly enough, even the mind evacuates. I was learning about this today, that in our sleep, the mind is cleansing all the toxins we've picked up during the day. Not just the things we thought about, but also toxins we picked up from food or from the environment. Those too have gone in. And the mind needs to be able to rest and sleep to cleanse all that out. So the evacuation process is happening at every stage of our physical being. So important, every one of these things. And then the four subtle senses, the mind, which is analyzing, the intellect, which is interpreting, the ego, which is who we think we are, and then the contaminated consciousness, the layer that covers the soul and contaminates our consciousness and doesn't let us experience who we are, but rather radiates a false energy based on goodness, passion, and ignorance. So those elements of nature now come and pollute us from inside, and we become caught up in them. If you're in the mode of goodness, you're very likely to be peaceful and kind. If you're the mode of passion, well, you'll say whatever it takes to get what you want. You are full of desires and you will work actively to get them. And if you're in the mode of ignorance, you're kind of given up. You're just kind of like defeated, feeling depressed, anxious, fearful, and pretty messed up. You're not going to be aiming for much at all. You're going to see the negative. You're not going to be very motivated, right? But the motivated person is the one who's in the mode of passion. But the person in the mode of goodness is very interesting. That person is at peace with themselves. They're happy with whatever they've got. We'll talk more about that as we go along. So basically, this is what it comes down to, is that goodness, passion, and ignorance involve. Goodness involves the mind, the thoughts, our desires. Passion involves intelligence and absorption of the senses and egotism, and ignorance, as we've talked about earlier. So let's now look at what Kapila has to say about this. He says here something so interesting. He says, when the soul is under the spell of material nature and false ego, right? The three modes of nature. So when the soul is under the spell of material nature, it identifies with the body as the self. Really introspect and think about it. Do you identify with this body as who you are? If you're older, as you get older, you're thinking, oh my God, I'm getting so old. Oh my gosh, I'm getting this. I'm getting a little overweight. Do you identify that this is me? Do you worry about what people will think about that? Whether you're fat or you're thin, or you're putting on weight or you're losing weight, whether you're putting on wrinkles or you're losing them, do you worry about that? And if you do, that's what he's talking about. That you're identified with the body as the self. And therefore, that is weaving the spell of material nature on you. That spell is you've become absorbed in material activities, and you're thinking that you're the proprietor of everything. So three things that bring you under the spell of material nature: to identify with the body as the self, to become absorbed in doing material activities, and then finally thinking that you're the proprietor of everything you have. The conditioned soul, Kapila says, therefore transmigrates, that means reincarnates or goes from one body to another into different species of life, higher and lower. Humans being the higher, and lower could be like an insect. So the soul actually goes into so many different bodies, experiencing different realities. We've all been there. We've all been in that situation, and finally we've got this human form of life that must be used for self-realization. That is the purpose of human life. That is the exact point of why we incarnated as human beings. We went through 8,400,000 species of life, of different kinds of species. We were dogs, we were cats, we were bugs, we were worms. We went through all of that. And finally we got this human body. Are you going to use it or abuse it? Are you going to just use it to eat, drink, and be merry? Because that you can do even in a pig body. And you can do that in an animal body. You don't need a human body for that. The human body is designed for you to think about these deeper questions. About why we're here, who we are, what the purpose of life is, who is God, what is the soul. These are the things that human existence is meant for. And if we don't use our human life for this purpose, then there's no need of coming back as a human being. There's already too many of us out here, 8 billion now, right? It would be more helpful if if many of the people that are here went back into other species that were more appropriate for them. But yes, there are and has been a great surge of people seeking And it is to those seekers that these words, these timeless words from thousands of years ago, are coming and appealing even now. So Kapila continues. He says, actually a living entity, the living entity, you, your real self, right, your soul, is transcendental to material existence. You are transcendental to material existence, which means that you are not of this world. If you've ever had that feeling, I know I used to have it a lot, is that I'm not from here. I don't belong here. I don't feel like I'm part of this whole thing. You know, I don't know why these people are like the way they are, and I certainly wouldn't be that way, and it didn't make any sense to me. So if you've had that feeling that you don't belong here, you're in the right place. We are in fact transcendental to material existence. That is to say, we are of a much higher vibration than this world. This world that we have devoted our lives to being able to sustain our body, to sustain our family, our home, our, everything else. And we all have to do that, of course. But we've devoted our life to that, and there's the tragedy. Our devotion needs to be to the higher cause, that which is eternal. But we've devoted ourselves to the temporary, and therein is the great loss. So Kapila says, a living entity who is transcendental to material existence, but because of his mentality of lording it over material nature, his material existential condition does not cease. And just as in a dream, he is affected by all kinds of disadvantages. So, we have all kinds of problems, and we spend our days and our nights solving those problems, trying to find solutions, trying to sort things out, trying to figure what works and what doesn't work, right? Whether it's in our families, in our relationships with our children, the house, and with the car, and with the food, and with everything else that we're doing. We're constantly in the process of fixing and solving and sorting and all of that. But he says this comes from our mentality of lording it over material nature. What does it mean, lording it over? What does a lord do? A lord is someone who tries to control everyone, right? Lording it in that sense. So we are always trying to control material nature, and we're trying to own and possess it. We see that next new shiny thing, we've got to have it. We see some object of desire. It could be a person, it could be an object, it could be a thing, it could be a house, it could be some clothing. We want to have it. I'm not saying I'm impervious to that. I am totally subject to all of that. So are you. But the idea is to learn to restrain ourselves, to pull the senses back. And to the degree that we are able to do that, we're succeeding in what? In transferring that energy, that distractedness into the real self. We're now making time and space for our true self, for our soul, for being able to be in contact with that, for able to hear about things like this, to be able to, really seep this knowledge in and then start to live it. That is the point. It's not that we're ever going to go black or white. We're ever going to be 100% spiritual, not care about anything in the world, not bother to clean our house, not bother to eat, not bother to dress or have a shower. Absolutely not. Neither do we want to become so materialistic that we've got no time to nurture our spiritual self. There has to be a balance. That is vital. It does not mean that you will not be drawn to the things of the world. You will absolutely be drawn. That is the nature of having a mind and desires and all of that. But the more you're able to train it, like putting your mind on a leash, being able to train it, no, this is what is relevant. This is what is needed. No, we're not going to go out and get every new shiny toy that there is in the world. We're not kids anymore. We will use our intellect and our wisdom to make better choices. So Kapila continues. He says, it is the duty of every conditioned soul. We are all conditioned souls, right? Conditioned by this world, conditioned by all the inputs we've received from the world, whether it is to buy things or do things or meet people or whatever it might be. We're conditioned. It is the duty of every conditioned soul to engage his or her polluted consciousness, which is now attached to material enjoyment. So enjoyment is our birthright. Be very clear. Enjoyment, pleasure is our birthright. The only question is, are you going to get that enjoyment, that pleasure, are you going to depend on it from outside or inside? See, a drug, let's say heroin, let's say LSD, what does it do? It gives you a high. And that high is from a substance. Now, what happens when you take that substance? You become attached to it. You become addicted to it. Now you can't live without it. And the same thing is happening at a lesser degree with everything else. We need to have power. We need to have money. We need to have stuff. We need to get all kinds of things. You see where I'm going? That's the problem, that we become attached to material enjoyment. Enjoyment is okay, perfectly okay. But how about we turn inward and depend on nothing and no one for that enjoyment? How about we turn within and find the joy that lies here within us, that is inherent, that is actually who we are. And this inner joy is what we're looking for in the world. We're hoping to find it there. But in the world, it's fleeting. It's there for a moment, then it's gone. So, you get that new thing that you wanted. It feels great, wonderful. And then now you have it. Now there's no more importance, and it's gone shoved in some corner. Right? Whatever it is, you have this great person, you laugh, you have a fun time, and then it's gone. Next moment, you got to find something else. And it's always something else, something else, something else. And that's the treadmill of life. But in here, there is a permanent source of joy, a permanent source of happiness, of peace, of love, of contentment, of wisdom, of everything we've ever been looking for. It's right here. It's like having your keys in your pocket and looking for them all around the house. You're looking for them everywhere, but you're not getting them. Right? Oh, maybe that's it. Oh, maybe that's it. Maybe this, maybe that. But it's never it. You're never fulfilled. But the keys were in your pocket the whole time. The joy you were looking for, the peace you were looking for, the contentment you were looking for was with you all along, hidden inside. Now, there are many processes by which to awaken that. And the most popular, the most well-known is the eightfold yoga system called Ashtanga Yoga. So I'll put it on the screen. It's not what most people have thought it to be. Most people consider the Ashtanga Yoga system to be about some exercises. But if you look at this list here, it consists of many things. The first of which is yama, means restraining yourself, learning moral disciplines or taking moral vows, such as nonviolence, truthfulness, not stealing, not being greedy, and controlling your senses. That's just the first of them. Which yoga school teaches that, by the way? At least not most of the Western ones, and not these modern day ones that might have sprung up all over the world. The second is niyam, positive duties or observances, such as cleanliness, contentment. People don't even know what cleanliness is meant by when it comes to the Vedic culture. Very different standards. But contentment is whatever you have, discipline, self-reflection, and surrender to a higher power. Then you have asana, or posture. Then you have pranayam, breathing techniques. Then you have pratyahara, which is the sense, withdrawing your senses, right, from all the things that you could enjoy. Dharana, or focused concentration. Dhyana, meditative absorption. And finally, samadhi, bliss or enlightenment. So why did I bother showing you all this? Not because I want you to memorize it, but because I want you to understand that there is a process. And that process is it's not something you can just wish. It's not something that you can just hope will happen. It's not something that you'll get by going to a yoga class. No, it won't happen like that. It takes proper training with a guru, with a teacher who is self-realized. Only such a person can actually train you in these things. Now, on the path of bhakti, which is also what he's going to talk about, Kapila, there are slightly different things. There's what's called Navada Bhakti. So bhakti is the path of devotion. Bhakti is the path of love of God. And this is something that was talked about by Christ. It has been talked about by the Sufis. But the oldest tradition of that lies in India and is talked about by Krishna. And so in Krishna, we actually see the Leela of what love of God actually looks like. what it means to love God, what it means to be the friend of God, what it means to be the lover of God, what it means to be the wife or partner of God, what it means to serve God. All those different leelas. That's why we're going through all the different stories in the leelas. And at this point, in each of the leelas, there is a teaching. There is a deep wisdom. So then we'll go back to stories, but we'll come back to all the wisdom. But this is now, we're in that wisdom piece right now. So in bhakti, in the path of devotion, bhakti yoga as it is called, there are other ways of doing this. Like you said, heard in Ashtanga yoga, now in bhakti there is Navadha bhakti, or the 9 different kinds of bhakti. The first is called Shravana, which is about hearing about God, just as you're doing right now. Kirtana, speaking about God. Then, or chanting about God. Then Smarana, remembering. Then Pada Sevana, serving. Then Archana, worshipping God. Vandana, bowing down before God. Dasya, becoming a servant of God. Sankhya, becoming a friend of God. That's right, you can be the friend of God. And ultimately, Atmanivedana, surrendering oneself completely to God. So, Kapila points out the practice now. He goes into what is the practice required. And, while we've gone over these different systems, here's some of the things that really matter. The first of which is to see every living entity equally without enmity or attachment. See, we look at everyone and we make a judgment of them. This person I like, this person I don't like. This person is good, this person is bad. This person is going to hurt me, this person is going to love me. And this is how we go about sorting out the people in this world. But Kapila is teaching us that we need to see every living entity equally. It's the same thing Krishna said in the Bhagavad Gita as well. He talked about being able to see all beings, all creatures, all things with equal vision. So if that thing be a stone or it be gold, whether that be a person who is a sinner or a saint, being able to see all of them as the same, an animal or a human. It's not that we eat the animal but don't eat the human. If you're going to eat, if it was okay to eat things, eat living creatures which you haven't created, then it should be okay to eat any living creature. Why not eat the bugs? Why not eat the humans? Why not eat anything? People interpret lines like in the Bible where it says man is given dominion over the animals and say, oh, well, that means that therefore we can eat them. No, but it also says you're given dominion over your wife. You're given dominion over the planet. You're meant to preserve. Those are the intentions. Wonder if people forget what the original intent of words is and make up their own meanings according to their own convenience. So the sign of an evolved being is that you see every living entity equally. And this needs to be practiced. And this cannot be done by your mind. The symptom is this, that as you grow in your spiritual awareness, this will come about naturally. What is able to do this? Not the mind. The mind sees everything in terms of positive and negative, right and wrong, good and bad. It always sees things in dualistic terms. To see things in non-dualistic terms, this is what is being talked about. Then only can you see every living entity equally. Well, what's going to do that? Your eyes do not understand. They just take in the data. Your mind is the one that's doing the interpreting. So you're going to have to access a power greater than your mind that is going to override the mind. That power is the power of the soul. How will you access that soul? Through meditation, through the process of meditation and ultimately of bhakti, which is considered the highest form of self-realization, according to those who follow it. And with that, the mind becomes quiet. And when the mind is quiet, the soul awakens. And when the soul awakens, these things come naturally, easily, effortlessly. Yes, old habits have to be shaken a little bit, but it becomes a lot easier. Then he continues, control the senses and offer the result of one's work to God. So these two sentences, these two statements are actually interestingly put together. You see, the senses want. I want, I want, I want, I want. And therefore I work. And therefore I go out there and try to be rich. And that's what people call successful. If somebody can get all their desires fulfilled, if they can have anything they want, now you are successful. Successful at what? They don't ask that question. Successful at getting your desires fulfilled. I can buy any car I want. I can buy any house I want. I can fly anywhere I want. I can go first class and I can get the finest designer clothes. That's considered success. And I have, of course, millions of dollars to go behind it, or rupees, or whatever else you use. That's not success. Success is, can you control your mind? Can you see everyone equally? Can you control the senses? Can you abstain from desire? And whatever you do have, whether it's more or less, can you offer the results of your work to God and become detached from the fruits of your labor? That is spiritual practice. Then he continues, to be satisfied with what one earns without great endeavor. He's not saying you need to work hard. No, that's the teaching we've all been given. Got to work hard. Be satisfied with what one earns without great endeavor. The great endeavor should actually be for one's spiritual life. Not that the great endeavor is to take care of this body and then you die and you leave everything you've earned and everything you've achieved, you leave it all behind. Why would you put a great endeavor for that? The great endeavor should be for this, for the soul, to awaken it, for God. That needs to be the great endeavor. So how do you simplify your life? He says, eat only as much as is necessary. Live in a secluded place. Always be thoughtful, peaceful, friendly, and compassionate. One's seeing power, one's ability to see, should be increased through knowledge of spirit and matter. So why does he say that? One's seeing power should be increased. Now, I wear glasses, so my seeing power is increased by wearing the glasses. But I know what he's talking about. Through knowledge of spirit and matter, once you understand the differentiation and once you learn to recognize spirit and you learn to recognize matter, your seeing power has increased. So you might say, well, what do you mean? I've heard there's such a thing as spirit, and I know what there is such a thing as matter, but I've heard of spirit. I don't know what it is. No, you've actually been feeling and experiencing it all your life, whether you recognize it or not. The reality is that we are spiritual beings and we have been feeling the presence of spirit in our lives regularly. Any time where you experienced a feeling of being happy for no reason. So you're playing with your kids. So you're in nature. Maybe you're a surfer, maybe a skier, maybe you're into whatever activity, sport or any kind. But if you lost track of time, if you were in the moment, if you were in the flow, whether that is in creating something, a work of art, a painting, pottery, writing, or whether it was some kind of activity like a sport, or whether it was cooking or cleaning or even having sex, anywhere that you lost track of time and you experienced a flow state and you felt good and uplifted, you were in contact with spirit, with your true self. Now you may have thought, no, it was the activity that I was doing that was leading me to that, and I'd beg to differ. The activity led you there, yes. The activity was the process, but the result was that you experienced something of a higher nature. Now, of course, you'll keep going back to that process thinking that's the only way to get there. But the truth is, no, that's not the way. That's not the only way. That's like a person who thinks God is only found in the temple or the church or the mosque or whatever else they believe in. No, God is found everywhere. And spirit is found everywhere. So you have to diversify. And diversify means to find out what is it that I'm doing in that one activity that transports me beyond time and space, which makes me feel so good and so uplifted. And usually you'll find this is the key, is you've been in a state of dhyan or focus. You've been focused, your energies were totally focused. It's the same thing the meditator does when they're deep breathing. It's the same thing they do when they're chanting a mantra or singing kirtan. or doing worship. In all of those activities, it's about focus. So that focus is what causes us to get out of our mind and go into this blissful place. And it is that we need to come back to again and again and again. And then you're able to feel the difference between spirit and matter. Now it's a real lived experience. And you'll be able to go back to it at will anytime. You're not depending on any substance for that or anything for that. And the final thing Kapila says is avoid identifying with the body and bodily relations. So the key word here is identifying. You can't give up the body. You have a body. You live in a body. So the point is, don't identify with it. This is not who I am. I have a body. I have a mind. But I am not my body or my mind. That's the important part to take away. Okay, now what are the symptoms if you're actually there, or if you meet someone who claims to be there? The symptoms of a person who is self-realized are that they are free from false ego. That means they don't see themselves as better than anyone else. They don't see themselves as more accomplished, more smart, more intelligent. One should see his own self just as he sees the sun in the sky. I am just part of the vastness of all that is. I am just part of the beauty of creation. I am just one tiny little spark of light in this incredible universe. That is one of the symptoms. Then, a person who is in that state recognizes that the absolute being, or God, who is transcendental, enters into everything and is the eyes of the illusory energy. This is very poetically put. That God is present in everything, everywhere. We don't need to hunt for God or search for God or look for God and say, where is God? No. God is everywhere, or all around you, in you. Open your eyes and start to notice and experience. Instead of being in your head, notice the presence of this energy that feels so delicious and sweet and wonderful. And it's here, now, with you. The only thing is, get out of your head. Simple. Or difficult, whatever you want to believe. But I'm telling you, it's simple. Just believe it's simple, and it will be. So this energy, this presence, this God can be realized just as the sun is realized, first as a reflection on water. Right? The first time you see the sun, it's reflected in the water if you're in nature, or on the wall of a room, although the sun itself is situated in the sky. What a great way of putting it. So initially you will notice God in nature, in the energy around you and within you. Right? So that's how you'll notice God, as a reflection on water or on the wall of a room, right? Though it is situated in the sky. Though God is somewhere else, you will notice the presence of God here in the world. It's not about a belief system. It's not about believing something. It is an experience you will have. Then he continues, he says, the self-realized soul is thus reflected first in the threefold ego and then in the body, senses, and the mind. So as you become awakened, as you begin to experience the presence of your soul, first for moments at a time, and then gradually for longer periods of time, it will now become reflected in your consciousness. The threefold the gunas, they will become changed and altered. You will start to rise in your awareness and go from the mode of passion and ignorance to goodness. That will be one of the early symptoms. And it will show up in your body, in your health, in your senses, in your mind, as they become purified of desire and dependence and attachment. And then what will be the result of that? Although involved in the world, such a person is awake and realizes the self. In this state, one can clearly observe the functioning of the ahankara, or the false ego. In other words, a person who is awake not because they say they are, or because they wear a certain kind of robe, or they're given the title of a guru, or because they have 1 million followers. No, that's not it. Can you observe the workings of your ahankara or your false ego or your mind? Can you step away from your mind and watch it and observe it and direct it or let it go, either way? But the point being, are you able to observe your mind? Are you in the grip of your mind? Or are you free from your mind and able to see it from a distance? That is the essential part of awakening. And that is the beginning of self-realization. Because self-realization begins, just think of it like this. You were under the grip of your mind, right? You then learned the art of how to be able to step out of that. You now can watch your mind doing what it does, right? You can watch it. And not only that, you turn back and you see, well, who is the watcher? Who is the witness? Who is the one who is observing the mind? So now you see two things. You see the witness, the watcher, and you see the mind. And that is self-realization. You now realized it. You're no longer believing it. You no longer have a theory about it. You've actually realized it. It's the difference between, reading about a certain place versus actually going there and experiencing it firsthand. And that's what self-realization is. And now, even there, as you keep doing it over time, it becomes more and more who you are. You start manifesting that on a regular basis. It goes from a certain state you touch to a stage where you're at. Now, of course, Devahuti, the mother of Kapila, who's been listening to all of this, she's feeling a little overwhelmed. This is a lot, right? Talking about such ideal states and talking about such high-level achievement. So she says, Devahuti says, does material nature ever give release to the spirit soul? Like, listen, the world has me in its grip, right? Material nature. Will it ever release me? Will nature ever release the soul? As there is no separate existence of the earth and its aroma, you cannot separate the existence of the earth, meaning dirt, and its aroma, or of food and its taste. You can't separate these two. Or water from wetness. There cannot be any separate existence of intelligence and consciousness. Since one is attracted to the other eternally, how is their separation possible? How can there be freedom for the soul as long as material nature acts on him and binds him? Even if the great fear of bondage is avoided by knowledge and awareness, it may still appear again since its cause has not ceased. I mean, as questions go, this is absolutely brilliant. She's saying, look, how will I ever get free from this material nature? And again, we're not just talking about going to some heaven or going to some actually being here and being free. So material nature is going to constantly, through my mind, through the senses, through the world, is going to keep on trying to bind me. How will I ever get free? Even if I have knowledge and awareness, it may still grab me because the cause has not ceased. That there is the key. So this is such an important question. Kapila says, and he gives the answer. Kapila says, through bhakti, devotion, love of God. By hearing about me, by cultivating knowledge and detachment, by executing your prescribed duty as an offering to me, then there will be no karma and you will be freed from the contamination of Maya, or the illusion of this world. So keep in mind, yes, you have to do some effort. It's not just that you will be saved, that you will just, engage in being devoted to God or love God and boom, it's all taken care of. No. You still cultivate knowledge and detachment. You still can work on controlling the senses. You still execute your duties, whatever they are, as an offering to God. Then you will be helped That's the benefit of bhakti. Bhakti means in devotion. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, when he's asked the question, which is better, the path of the yogi or the path of bhakti or devotion, he says, both are good. Both will lead to liberation or moksha. But one who comes to me from a place of surrender, one who comes to me from a place of devotion, I pick them up from the ocean of birth and death and deliver them. You get help, but you've got to do the work. You've still got to do the stuff, what it takes. Your free will has to be 100% engaged. You must make that choice moment after moment after moment. That is on you and me and all of us. He continues, the influence of material nature has covered the living entity, and thus it is as if the living entity were always in a blazing fire. But by the process of seriously discharging bhakti, devotion, love of God, this influence can be removed, just as wooden sticks which cause a fire are themselves consumed by it. One will then stop trying to control material nature, become independent, and shine in his own glory. In the dreaming state, one's consciousness is almost covered, and one sees many inauspicious things. But when one is awakened and fully conscious, such inauspicious things cannot bewilder him. You see, the analogy is so perfect. In your sleep, you feel, oh, maybe there's a tiger running after me, or someone, people are coming in with guns and trying to shoot me, or something in their car, right? But when you wake up, you realize, that was just a dream. Oh my God, I was having a terrible dream, but I was having a dream. Now you wake up and you realize it's a dream and you move on with your life. The same thing happens to a person who awakens into self-realization, which is that they realize that all of this that was happening, from whether it was youth or old age, it was disease, or it was anything that was going on in the world, all the stuff that is happening in the world, the wars, the chaos, the whatever it is, was all a dream. In fact, when people have died and left their bodies, they've said the same thing. When I've done past life regressions with people, when people have talked about near-death experiences, they realize at that time that this was all a dream and that they're okay. That even if they were killed in that dream, they're still safe. Nothing harmed them. They're alive. They're floating. They're in this blissful place. They're doing great. Nothing was ever able to harm them. So it's just like waking up. The difference between someone dying and experiencing this and becoming enlightened and experiencing this is that when you die and you experience this, you still have to keep coming back into this world because you haven't really attained that state. That's your natural state of the soul, yes, no doubt. But you haven't learned to do it here in this world. The awakened being, the self-realized or enlightened being, has learned to do it in this world of matter, with all the pressures, with all the stuff coming at you from your senses, from your mind, from other people. The threefold miseries they talk about: miseries caused by your body, miseries caused by other people, and miseries caused by nature. Through all of that, they have learned to be steady in the self, attached to the self, focused on the self, right? And to God. Then Kapila continues, the influence of material nature cannot harm an enlightened soul, even though he or she engages in material activities, because such a person knows the absolute truth and their mind is fixed on the Supreme. Now, this does seem, even if I take Devahuti's question, it does seem to be hard. And so Kapila goes to the next step. He says, when one engages in bhakti or devotion to God and self-realization, for many births, one becomes developed in consciousness. So this is a key word. We become, as you keep practicing, your consciousness evolves and grows. You become developed in consciousness, and there is no desire to enjoy the world. This is the symptom. This is where you know you're ready, you've come to the next level. By my unlimited causeless mercy, kripa is the word used in Sanskrit. By my unlimited causeless means it's nothing about what you do. It's not about because you've been a good man or woman or because you've been a good whatever. It's not because you've been done right or wrong. By my causeless, unlimited mercy, the devotee becomes freed from all doubts and steadily progresses towards my abode, which is filled with unadulterated bliss. This world, bliss is adulterated, right? It's a little bliss and then a lot of struggle and maybe a lot of unhappiness as well. But he says, my abode is filled with unadulterated bliss. That is the ultimate perfectional goal of the living entity. After giving up the present material body, the mystic devotee goes to that transcendental abode and never comes back. When a perfect yogi's attention is no longer attracted to the byproducts of mystic powers, and we're going to talk about what those are in just a minute, when a perfect yogi's attention is no longer attracted to the byproducts of mystic powers, which are manifestations of the external energy, his progress towards me becomes unlimited, and thus the power of death cannot overcome such a person. So what are these mystic powers? Because this is the ultimate trap. On the person who is on the path of yoga, on the path of devotion, there are certain things that are given as blessings and gifts. So I'm going to go through that list for you so you can see. The first is, and this is what the yogis were able to accomplish, to become small like a particle, anima siddhi, to be lighter than a soft feather, laghima siddhi, to procure anything from anywhere, prapti siddhi, to become heavier than the heaviest, mahima siddhi, to create or annihilate anything at will, ishitva siddhi. See, imagine if you could do these things. How would that affect you if you could create or annihilate anything? If you could procure anything from anywhere? How? Just sitting right here. No money needed. No gold, no cryptocurrency needed, nothing. Just you can sit here and you can get anything you want, right? You can become small, you can become light, you can become heavy. You can control all material elements, whether it's the temperature, the weather, whether it's at least for yourself. Vasitva siddhi. You can fulfill all your desires. Prakamya siddhi. These are all the siddhis, the gifts that are given to yogis. And you can assume any form or shape that you may desire. Kama vasayita siddhi. So, what would happen if these things happened to you? Would you become carried away? Would you find yourself feeling proud and arrogant? It's very easy. If you could have anything you want, if you could fulfill any desire you have, if you can take any shape or form you like, you could be instantly be as sexy and beautiful and young and whatever you desire. What would it do to you? Yeah, it would definitely capture your mind and ego. And it would take you right back to square one, like playing the game of, I don't know, Snakes and Ladders, was it? Or was it Monopoly? Where you go back to the beginning, right? And then you got to start all over again because now you got sucked in. So one of the dangers along the path of self-realization and of yoga is the Ashta Siddhis, the 8 Siddhis that we talked about, the 8 kind of miraculous gifts that are given to a person. And they are actually an impediment to spiritual growth. So one who gets them says, no, thank you. I am good just the way I am. I'm not interested in any of this. What I am interested in is my devotion to God, my love of God, because therein, for me, that is my treasure. That is my greatest wealth. We say in this beautiful song that is there, Hamaro Dhan Radha, Shri Radha, Shri Radha, that Radha is my greatest wealth, that God is my greatest wealth, and nothing else compares to that. So I don't need any of this stuff. You can keep it. Really. Imagine yourself having all of these gifts available to you and then rejecting them because you know you have found something even better than all of this. So I'm going to turn the questions over to all of you and see what your thoughts were. Let's do that. Okay. One more here. All right. So, does anyone have any questions? Let's see. Cindy has some wonderful questions here. She says, if holistic sciences, let's bring it into the question here. If holistic sciences include the 25 senses to heal, balance, and clarify the self from the spell of limitations to self-awareness, then to the experience of self-realization, is it possible to sustain this state of being without losing our self-identity? Okay, maybe you didn't catch this part of it, but the idea is to lose our self-identity. Okay? The idea is to go beyond the virtual self, the egoic self, and to discover the real self. Now, these different senses that were talked about, even if you heal them, even if you balance them, even if you clarify them, and if you take away all the limitations that they have, then coming to self-awareness or self-realization is about coming to a different dimension. It's not necessarily about healing. So a lot of people on the spiritual path now are all about healing, healing, healing. And to some degree, it's all right. I mean, just like you have a car and you have to maintain your car and you've got to sometimes take it to the to the mechanic or whatever else, and your body also requires things and your mind also requires things. But healing is not the purpose of spirituality. Let's be very clear. A lot of folks are thinking that's what it is. Spiritual life is about healing or something. It's about manifesting. No, none of the above. That's not spiritual life at all. That's just pandering to your ego. That has nothing to do with spiritual life. You're learning how to orchestrate the forces of nature and of this universe and for your own selfish ends. It will not get you to self-realization. It will not get you to any state of awakening or enlightenment. It will do nothing of the sort. Self-identity, such as different characteristics of the demigods or personalities of avatars, even that of Vishnu, Shiva, or Brahma. In a greater reality, are we then ultimately one, acting out various roles for the purpose of being? Okay, let's take on this one. I know this idea is very prominent, that we are all one, and that we are none different than God. This is true and not true. It is a partial truth. We are one with, this is how Chaitanya taught it, and it was beautiful. He says, we are one with God and yet simultaneously different from God. We are one with each other and yet different from each other. Each one of us is a unique creation. Yes, you can choose on the yogic path to lose that individuality and merge into the light. That is a choice, not the only choice. The other choice is to maintain your uniqueness and your individuality the way you were created, and to learn to find that oneness with each other and with God. In other words, in being one with you, I don't want you to be like me. I want us to find that common element, that common thread between us of oneness, but at the same time maintain my individuality and my unique perspective on things. That allows us to have an interesting relationship. And through that interesting relationship, we get to enhance each other. In much the same way, we have the same thing with God. We get to experience a sense of oneness with God, but at the same time, in being different, we get to enjoy the lila, the pastimes, the activities, the relationship, the love affair with God. It's a beautiful thing. It's absolutely beautiful. But if you were just one, then there would be no differentiation. We would be the same. So is oneness sameness? Is that what we mean? Is it? What does it mean to be one? Question for any or all of you. Whoever's got an answer to that, I'd like to hear about it. What does it mean to be one? And why is it so important? Would you like let's say you have a partner, let's say you have a friend, let's say you have any relationship, a child. Would you like your child and you, or your friend and you, or your partner and you to be one and the same? To be non-differentiated, right? Would you like that? Or would you like them to be as they are in their own uniqueness, even if that's a little difficult to take sometimes? And would you like to be able to love them as they are? Because is that not where unconditional love is born? In us being able to love each other with our differences, with our uniqueness. And is that not therefore a valid way in which to relate to God? I'm not saying that any path is wrong. You can absolutely choose and desire and long for a state of oneness with God. Yes. But depending on the path you're choosing, the yogis will tell you that is the superior path, and the bhakta, those who are devotees, lovers of God, will tell you, no, there's no way I would choose that. I want to have a relationship with my beloved. I want to have a relationship with my God. I want to dance with God. I want to sing with God. I want to love God. I want to be in a relationship with God. And to that end, I don't want to be one. But you know what? When you are in love with someone, then there is a sense of oneness that occurs, isn't there? You feel one, and yet you separate out and become two, and then you come back and become one. That, to me, in relationship with each other and with God, is the most wonderful way to be. Think about it. See what's right for you. And I love your questions. Thank you. And in a way, you could say we are one. I love what Cindy has said here too as well. That we are ultimately one, acting out various roles for the purpose of being. Yes, in fact, there is only God. And so in one sense, you could say there is only one, act in different roles. Yes, absolutely right. And absolutely the other way as well. On the spiritual path, you are going to constantly find this kind of dichotomy. It is this and that. And if you think it is only this, then you've lost it. It's always this and that. It's both and more. But if you think it's either or, then there'll be an argument. And then we'll try to be right. But it's never either or. It's always both and. And so what that means is, yes, we are all manifestations of God and therefore no different than God. And yes, we are totally different than God. And so you see, it may be contradictory and it may seem puzzling because the human mind would like to put things into boxes and think in terms of either or. But the Spirit can encapsulate all different possibilities. And as long as we stay in the realm of multiple possibilities, we will stay free from the influence of this world, from all the arguments, from all the fights, from all the conflict, and from all the misery that this world generates. Thank you so much. I so appreciate you being here, and for all your questions, and for all your love, and for all your devotion to be here time after time. I am deeply honored. Thank you. And I'll see you next week.